Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on discovering the past through digitized archival material on AM Explorer. AM Explorer is among the wealth of resources available to American Ancestors members, found under the External Databases heading in our search menu on americanancestors.org. My name is Kathleen McKenzie, Education and Programming Manager here at American Ancestors and New England Historic Genealogical Society, and I will be your moderator for today's session. This program is brought to you by the Brew Family Learning Center. American Ancestors and the New England Historic Genealogical Society is a nonprofit organization supported by our members and donors. We provide resources and expertise in nearly all aspects of family history, and are pleased to offer such programming for our members and friends around the world. Our presenter today is Dr. Laura Blomvall. Laura completed a PhD at the University of York in the UK in 2019. She works as the engagement manager for AM, a publisher of online primary source collections accessible to American Ancestors and NEHGS members through AM Explorer. The AM Explorer platform contains over 120 collections of digitized archival material, from Colonial America and Migrations to New Worlds to gender, identity, and social change. Today, Laura will be giving us an introduction to AM Explorer, and then she'll go into a live demo of how to search the platform and its collections. At any point during the presentation, feel free to type your questions into the Q&A panel found at the bottom of your screen. We'll address those at the end. We are also recording this event, and starting tomorrow, you can freely go back and review any of the content from the presentation on our website. So if you miss something on the first listen, don't worry, you can always go back and review the presentation later. All right, so without further ado, I'll go ahead and turn things over to Laura.
Thank you so much, Kathleen, for that kind introduction. I'm very grateful to Kathleen and to American Ancestors for having me here today to speak to you, and for all of their hard work behind the scenes organizing this webinar program. I've heard a lot about how passionate and intelligent the members of American Ancestors are, so I'm really excited to be speaking to you today about the archival collections we've published and that you can use in your research. Just a little bit about what we do as a publisher. So you can kind of really see on this slide the journey that our collections go through. So we work really closely together with archives and libraries and museums around the world, from America to Australia and Canada and the UK, France, Germany, Switzerland. So you can see an image here of the National Archives in London in Kew, and we'll look at some of their documents in a little bit. So we might go to their archives, we go through, you can see the confidential print files here on the middle of the screen. And we work for years going through the material, digitizing it, working together with academics and curators to add any indexing and metadata and cataloging to the collections, and so that you can then access that as an online collection from your home and do your research, running keyword searches through that digitized material. So that's the kind of journey that our collections go through. If I could just have the next slide, please. There's a lot of different types of writing and different types of objects and music and films, as you will see in a bit, that we digitize, but not all of it is in the form of a printed book, or periodicals or newspapers. I've shown here two examples of different types of writing media. One is a letter written on parchment in 1452 by Margaret Paston to her husband John. They were part of a gentry family in Norfolk during the War of the Roses, and we digitized that in our medieval family life collection. The other is also a letter, but this time this letter was written by a Maori officer from New Zealand on an ivy leaf in France, which we digitized in our First World War database. And if you read Margaret Paston's letter, you can actually see that it ends with a comment that says paper is dainty, which means paper is expensive. So you can see that she's actually cut out a bit of the paper in the corner to save it, and her writing gets more cramped towards the end of the letter. And I imagine that the Maori soldier who is writing on the Ivy Leaf in France was from the New Zealand Pioneer Battalion. He was probably also running out of paper, but this really simple poem that he wrote for his loved one back in New Zealand on this delicate skin of an ivy leaf is so fragile and beautiful that it's kind of incongruous with the images of mud that we associate with trench warfare. And all of this is kind of types of material that we work with to digitize them in our collections, and really thinking about nothing being too small to be worthy of kind of preservation. So that's kind of some of the examples of different things that we might work with. And if I just can get the next slide, please. So I'm going to jump into the live demos really quickly. You have access to 130 collections that we've published through the AIM Explorer platform. And I really want to show you how to search through that platform best. And I really want to talk about family research and contextualizing research into your family members by using the searching tools that are available to you to navigate the archival collections that we've published. There's one essay here that I wanted to mention, which we've included in our Colonial Caribbean collection of a researcher, Dr. James Dawkins from the University of Nottingham, who used colonial documents in our Colonial Caribbean documents to trace the financial wealth of his own family that was accrued from the slave trade. And he thought about the moral legacies of the slave trade in his family through primary source research. So there's already examples where our collections have been used in this way. However, what I really wanted to do is to jump off to away from the slides and go to AIM Explorer. So I'm going to just share my screen. Okay, so you should now see the AIM Explorer homepage. So you could enter any search word over here and just begin your searching journey. But you can also go into this collections tab and have a look at the types of collections that you have access to. There's different filters on the left-hand side. So you could choose to look at collections relating to North America, for example. So we could click here and you can see the types of collections that touch on North American history. Anything from frontier life, food and drinking history, which has an amazing Mexican food cookbook collection, life at sea, market research and American business, popular medicine in America, service newspapers of World War II, the Nixon years. And if we clear the filters, you can see a whole range of different types of collections. And you could click on hover over any of these tiles. So American World War II, explore extensive collections sourced from the National World War II Museum in New Orleans, and click into it and it will take you directly to that collection. But what I really wanted to show you was different ways of searching it. So you could just enter any name. So I'm going to enter the name Stallworthy. That's actually the surname of my colleague Emily. And look at what kinds of documents turn up using that name. So there's 24 different results. And I could click into one of them. This is a document called Examinations from 1717 to 1722, which we've digitized in our Life at Sea collection. And if I click on View Document, it will directly take you into the archival collection that we've published it in. So I'm going to press expand. And you can see there's a Johannes Stallworthy, whose name is mentioned in this document in a resource that covers the life of ordinary sailors during transatlantic maritime journeys from the 1600s to the 1900s, so 3 centuries of maritime navigation. This comes from the High Court of Admiralty Instance and Prize Courts Examinations and Answers documents. And it's a type of a court record. It's been indexed under the theme of discipline and punishment. However, in addition to doing searches of individual names, you could also look at the history of different communities that you're part of. I'm sure you kind of come from different parts of the world, and you could be part of a Quaker community or Catholic community, an indigenous tribe, and you can also explore the histories of those communities. So I'm actually originally from Finland, so I'm going to search for the word Finland and see kind of how the kind of that history comes through primary sources and archival material within this collection. So you can see a list view of documents here, and the way that the documents get ordered in the list view is that the search algorithm is looking for the number of search hits within the document for the word Finland, and it's also looking at whether the word Finland appears in the metadata to the document. So the metadata would mean any information that comes from the physical catalogue of the archive that the archivists have added to the document, and any of the additional indexing that our editorial team has added to the document. So if the word Finland appears in the metadata, it will also get pushed further up as being relevant. The other thing that you can do is look at the list of collections on the right-hand side, and that will give you the number of documents within that collection that come back with that result. So that will give you a sense of which collections might be particularly relevant to you. And this is a really useful tool because sometimes you might not realize from just the title of the collection that there might be different types of sub-collections hidden inside it that are particularly relevant. So you can see Migration to New Worlds has almost 500 search results for the word, and that's because there is actually a sub-collection there of a Finnish migration to Minnesota in the 1800s, and a collection of oral histories, and you can see some of them here. So I'm going to click on one of them just to give you a flavor of an oral history. Migration to New Worlds covers kind of 2 centuries of migration to North America and Australia from Europe. So if you have any migration history within your family, it might be a really interesting one to explore. So we can see here, here is the metadata that I was talking about. So this is with an interview with Katri Saari. It was recorded in 1980. And there's a description here. Katri Saari explains how her family emigrated due to the poverty in Finland, how they packed and came to America via England, how the trip took 3 weeks, and how she worked as a maid on a farm, and how her children were born, and they come from the Minnesota Finnish American Family History Collection. And I'm just going to play you a little bit.
Mitä te sitten saitte kasvamaan täällä?
No ensimmäisenä vuotena me kasvatimme juurikasvia vähän ja perunaa.
So you can see she's actually not learned English yet. What she was asking, the interviewer asked her, what did you plant when you first arrived? And she says they began by planting root vegetables.
Ja oli oikein hyvät vuodet, ensimmäiset vuodet. Me saimme kaikki. Me saimme kaikki.
Että ei Kostin tarvitsenut sitten mennä mihinkään muun työhön.
No ei mitään muuta työtä saanut.
And she says here that they had a very good harvest for the first few years. And then the interviewer asks, oh, that because you had good harvest, that means you didn't have to get any other jobs, or your husband didn't have to find other employment. And Katri Saari replies by saying that there wasn't any other employment available. You can also do slightly more complex searches if you have several different keywords that you want to look at. So I'm going to search for Finland W/30 Soviet to look at if I'm really interested in the relationship between the Finland and Soviet Union in the Cold War period. And the W30 means that I'm looking for the two words within 30 words of each other. So it's what we call a proximity search. If you didn't have that, it would just kind of resort to an and search. So you would look for those two words appearing anywhere in the document together. So you might get a, let's say, a 500-page diplomatic dispatch document in Foreign Office Files for China, and the word Finland appears on page 3 of the dispatch, and the word Soviet Union appears on page 320. So they don't actually relate to each other in the document very closely. Whereas if you use a proximity search like W/30, that means that they're going to appear in the same paragraph together, most likely, and they will be part of the same conversation. It's also really useful if you're doing name searches. If you're looking for first names and surnames, you could do, so for example, with my name, you could do Laura W/5 Blomvall, and that will allow things to be discovered that might have my name, whether my name is put down as Laura Blomvall or Blomvall, Laura, or with all of my middle names, Laura Maria Johanna Blomvall. It will be able to discover those names with different variations of how that name is put together. So the proximity search is a really useful tool. And we get here, the first result is a film called Good Neighbors, which was filmed in 1977. It's a documentary from the Leningrad Documentary Film Studios of the Union of Soviet Societies of Friendship and Cultural Ties with Foreign Countries. And the film is called Good Neighbors. And I'm just going to click into it. Let me just log in. I'm just going to click because I got logged out and logged in, I'm just going to rerun the search. My search expired. So you can see that the words get highlighted in the transcript, and I can click on any part of the transcript and go directly into the film.
The roads connecting the Soviet Union and Finland have long since become roads of friendship.
And I can click on next to go to the next hit.
Ships travel from the Finnish interior to the Black and Caspian Seas. Following the initiative of the Finland Soviet Union Society, a Lenin Museum was opened in Tampere. This museum reflects the main stages in Lenin's life and activity. One of the exhibits is the decree of the Council of the People.
So you can kind of, if I was interested in what it was like to my for my family living under the kind of threat of Cold War in Finland during the kind of 1970s, it would be an interesting document to look at. Obviously, you can see that this was made in Leningrad, so this is a Soviet perspective on the relationships between Finland. Obviously, from the Finnish side, the relationship between USSR might appear very different. This is a kind of propaganda documentary, but it's really interesting to be kind of seeing how that's being portrayed at the time from the point of view of the USSR. who's kind of using very kind of domineering and aggressive tactics in its diplomacy with its neighboring countries. Finland was one of the only country European country sharing a border with USSR that didn't fall under the Iron Curtain during the Cold War, but the kind of relationships were extremely fragile and tense throughout that period. That's kind of in a snapshot of how to search across the AM Explorer platform. What I wanted to show you next is how to search across the individual collections. So I'm going to go to the collections page, and I'm going to go to Colonial America collection, which I know many of you are already using. So I just kind of want to show you what the layout of an AM collection looks like, what you can expect from it, and how you can search inside the individual databases of archival sources. So you can see a little blurb here, how Colonial America makes available 1,500 volumes of the CO5 series from the National Archives UK. It covers the period 1606 to 1822, and it consists of the original correspondence between the British government and the governments of the American colonies. So kind of a really uniquely rich resource for historians of that period. If I open up the navigation bar over here, you can see all of the introductory pages on the left-hand side. So this is a really good starting point if you want to find out more about what's included and what's been selected to the collection. So if I go to Nature and Scope page, there's an introductory document. What are the CO5 files? There's an explanation of the different modules, what kind of periods of history they cover anything from early settlement to American Revolution, and growth, trade and development. There's an introduction to the different topics from colonial legislation, economic and industrial development, the Glorious Revolution, the War of Independence, the different types of documents included from letters, court records, diaries, newspapers, military documents, petitions, shipping lists. And then there's a separate section on our maps and the kind of map gallery that we've curated, and a contextual essay on maps. So this is a kind of really useful starting point. There's also a tab explaining more about the archive that we worked with. There's guide to the different thematic areas. So you could look at more on the colonial development, for example. You can also find out which academics we worked with and which curators we worked with who helped us shape and make decisions about the collections. So we worked really close together with academic experts on the history of colonial America, who helps make decisions about what to digitize, what additional indexing to add to the collection, what kind of extra resources we should build. Then next to the introductory pages, you have Documents tab. That's where all of the archival material sits. So that's the kind of real heart and soul of any of our collections. So you can see all of the documents here, or go to a map gallery. So if I click here, you can go directly to view all of the documents that I included here, apply different filtering options. You can filter by dates, by document type, themes, colonies, modules, and I'm going to show you that in a second. There's also an explore feature. So here's all of the kind of secondary contextual features. If you want more introductions than are within the Nature and Scope page, there's exhibitions, there's data associations, academic essays. You can read how to use shipping returns in the Colonial Office 5 records, how to use maps in colonial America, how religion functioned in the American colonies, race and identity, the the Indians' War of Independence, the Imperial Crisis, textiles, lots of different kind of more secondary context essays to the primary sources if you want more of an academic angle. But what I wanted to show you, so there are the three main ways of searching that you have within the collections. So you could enter a search word in the basic search box and just run a search through it. There's also an advanced search page, but what I also want to show you is the search directories. And this is a little bit like if you kind of open up an academic book or kind of history book, and you go right to the back to the index of the book, and you see different terms in alphabetical order, and which gives you the pages where to jump to find the content that you're looking for. So this works a little bit like an index. So it's got all of the metadata and indexing terms kind of tagged here, and anything from, and we've chosen this kind of additional indexing to add in consultation with the editorial board members. And I've gone to, there's peoples and religion, governors, places, but I've gone to other names. Obviously, a lot of the names will be kind of fairly prominent public figures. But I'm just going to show you how doing those searches might work. So I'm just going to click on Benjamin Franklin. And you see there's 117 results. There's one on the petition of the Assembly of Pennsylvania. And there's a little pen symbol here. So, and that pen symbol means that once you're inside the document, despite it being a manuscript handwritten document, once you're inside of it, you can search words inside of it. So I'm going to search for Franklin. So the site level search found the people tag within the metadata. But if I search again for the word Franklin inside of the document, we can see whether it's been written within the document. So you can see here the names being picked up within the document. And if we were more interested in kind of the context of Benjamin Franklin's time in Philadelphia, especially, so he arrived in Philadelphia after some time in London in 1726. Just waiting for this to load. Going to click on view all documents and click 1726 and put his death year 1788 as an end date, and I'm going to choose Pennsylvania as my colony of choice and press apply. And now you can start seeing kind of, if you were interested in the types of colonial governance that was taking place in Pennsylvania during Benjamin Franklin's period of living there, you can start really getting a granular insight into the types of colonial administration and organization and legislation and kind of rule that was taking place in those years. Anything from account of transports in the service of New York to maps of North America, acts appointing wardens for the Port of Philadelphia, So a real range of different types of documents. And next, I'm going to jump into a different collection just to give you, before we go into a Q&A, a very different example of a collection. So I'm going to go to our collection, Gender Identity and Social Change. The reason I wanted to use this is I've been reading my own grandmother's memoirs recently, and she's really open in those memoirs about her parents, her siblings, the farm that she grew up on, the war years, but she doesn't talk about her marriage a lot. So I know from my father that she was quite unhappy and separated from my grandfather, but she didn't put any of this in writing. And because of the absence of her own voice, maybe I want to look at the voices of other women describing their experiences of marriage from the same period to understand a little bit more of the kind of emotional and social context in which those kind of feelings and decisions were made. And I'm going to kind of look at the Gender Identity and Social Change collection. Again, you can get a little bit of a blurb over here. So this is a collection of essential primary sources documenting the changing in representations and lived experiences of gender roles and relations from the 19th century to the present day. It covers anything from women's suffrage to the feminist movement, the men's movement, employment, education, the family, government, and politics. We have the same layout here that we were looking at earlier. I'm just going to click on the participating libraries page. So you can see that we've worked with quite a few different libraries here. So about 9 different libraries from the US, Canada, Australia, and the UK. So this is a kind of example of a multi-archive collection. Colonial America, we worked only kind of doing a very comprehensive digitization of the CO5 files of the National Archives. And we worked with a single archive for that. This is a thematic collection where we try to unite material across a number of different archives around the world around the theme of gender identity and social change to allow kind of comparisons in an international global context of experiences of gender, particularly in the Anglophone world specifically. And because of that kind of thematic focus, these have been organized by theme. So you can see there's women's suffrage, domesticity, the men's movement, leisure and entertainment, conduct and politeness, sex and sexuality, employment and labor. And you can see some of the different document types that are covered from business records, cartoons, leaflets, legal documents, organizational records to more personal documents like diaries, correspondence, photographs. And I'm actually just going to go to the advanced search. So let's say that because of my grandmother's experiences, I'm interested in marriage expectations in the 1950s when she got married. So I'm going to click put marriage and expectation. I'm going to allow, I'm going to put expect. So I'm going to allow word stemming, which means that different variant endings for those 2 words will be allowed in my search results. So as well as expect, I can get results like expected or expectations. And I'm going to put another proximity here. I'm going to use 30 again. You can play around with different proximities. If you use 5 or 10, it's probably going to be in the same sentence. If you use 30 or 40, it's going to be in the same paragraph. 50 or 60 is likely to be on the same page. And I'm going to apply date filters 1950 to 1959 and press apply. I'm just going to run the word limits again. they seem to have dropped for some reason. Okay, so great. We've got 23 different results. So I'm going to look at I think it was this one. So this is a survey of someone in a Smith College and after their graduation in the 1950s, asking about what their marriage was like, and there's someone asking whether the marriage is satisfying, and the woman answers yes. How does it compare with your expectations of marriage? And they respond, since I can no longer remember when I wasn't married or what I expected, I can't answer this, but anyway, I'm happy. How does it change with the years? I don't know exactly, but every anniversary I have thought the last year was better than any of that before. So she seems to be quite happy. I'm just going to rerun this search, because I think there was another example that I want to show you. So you can also rerun the searches within the documents. You can also save the images and download the images as PDFs. So you can start getting different kind of responses and get a kind of wide range of different women's experiences of marriage within the 1950s and how women felt about it. We could also go, instead of just staying in one collection, I could go into one of our other gender collections. So let's say that I pick the theme gender and sexuality. I could then go look down, go to sex and sexuality, for example. And then instead of doing the same advanced search, you can also use Boolean operators. So I've used again the W/30, and then I've used an asterisk at the end of expect to allow variant endings of that word. And sex and sexuality is another kind of thematic collection. We've worked with a number of different archives around the world. The first module focused entirely on the Kinsey Institute collections. So kind of really pioneering sexual research organization in post-war America, studying sexuality and the experience of sex in the post-war period. The second module added other collections looking at kind of really diverse experiences from trans, lesbian, gay, experiences of sexuality from a number of different archives from the US, the UK, and Australia. I'm just going to kind of use the document type. Let's say I'm interested in some kind of more personal responses, so I'm going to choose correspondence and diaries as a filter, press apply. And again, I'm interested in the 1950s, so I'm going to put the 1950 to 1959 and press apply. And again, you can, so just to give you a little sense of the different tools here, you can always create an account, which is really simple to do. You just need an email and a password. You won't be sent any emails from us. We won't see your account at all. It's just so that you can have a stable account where you can save, bookmark and bookshelf different images and documents, and add different documents to your archive. You can download the entire document as a PDF or download the image range. You can also expand the metadata details over here. You can see a snippet view of the where the search results appear, as well as seeing a red rectangle around the page in the thumbnail view. I'm just going to click into the search result. So you'll be able to see from this material, given that this is kind of research into sexology, there'll be Kinsey, Alfred C. Kinsey was really researching the topic of pleasure and within this context, pleasure within marriage. So the material is even more open about intimacy and sexual pleasure within marriages in the 1950s. So it gives a kind of different angle to the documents that we've seen from Smith College in Gender Identity and Social Change. So there's kind of experiences of a woman whose husband has lived in a marriage with them for many years and is acting out of jealousy and insinuating to the community that they had what she calls not entirely pure relations before marriage in order to damage her wife's reputation out of jealousy of that wife's kind of success. Social success within the community. So you can see some of the kind of different standards that are playing out within the community that within kind of marital context. So that's a kind of really short snippet view of some of our collections, how to search them, how to search AM Explorer. I hope this has been useful in terms of just giving you the tools of how to start searching for your families and finding out more context about your own family members and the communities that you come from, and the different kinds of pressures and opportunities that might have played out when they were making decisions about their lives. And if you have any questions, please feel free to pop them into the Q&A. And I'm now going to hand over back to Kathleen.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Laura. So yes, I am going to share my screen again. So just one moment here. And as Laura said, if you do have any questions, please feel free to pop them into the Q&A panel at the bottom of your screen. We'll be getting to those in just a moment. First, I did just want to let you know about a few events that we have coming up. So as you can see here on the screen, on April 20th, we have a free webinar called Spilling the Tea, Researching Boston Tea Party Patriots. In this webinar, we'll be going over how to research your genealogical connections to the Boston Tea Party, and we'll also share some information about a new lineage society created in partnership with the Boston Tea Party Ships and Museum. On Wednesdays in May, beginning on May 10th, we'll have an online course on Pennsylvania research, exploring 4 centuries of history and genealogy in the state. And then finally, we'll have our spring stay at home June 8th through 10th for 3 days of lectures and consultations with our genealogists. The topic of this spring stay at home will be filling in the dash, uncovering ancestral stories. All right, so now we can go ahead and move on to some of the great questions that you've been submitting. So let's see here. So first off, Laura, there was a question here about records and databases in AM Explorer that are in different languages. Does AM Explorer offer translations or transcriptions of materials that are in different languages?
That's a really great question. To be really transparent, many of kind of my colleagues are kind of English and English speaking. Many of the universities that we work with are English speaking, so there is a majority of English language collections within our databases. So that is a dominant language within the majority of our collections. There is examples like the Mexican cookbook collection in food and drinking history. We have our first Spanish language collection currently in development that will kind of be purely in Spanish language. In our American Indian newspapers collections, there are newspapers, periodicals that are entirely in those indigenous languages. Within those collections, the academic feedback that we received was that translation added a kind of layer of interpretation and mediation that wasn't academically appropriate for those universities. So there aren't translations provided for those documents. With the American Indian newspapers, we worked with language consultants within those indigenous language tribes who indexed the newspaper periodicals that were in indigenous languages, so to make them a little bit more discoverable, but they're still in those indigenous languages without word-to-word translations. But the majority of our collections are in the English language. Then on the question of transcriptions, so you are free to request data associated with our collections. So there are transcriptions associated with printed and typed collections. So anything that's gone through OCR, or optical character recognition. Currently in our kind of most recent collections in our Cortex platform, so you saw the Life at Sea collection, also for Colonial Caribbean collection, the handwritten text recognition transcription became possible for the first time 18 months ago. So for those new collections, now it's possible to download transcripts of handwritten documents as well. But it's going to take quite a few years for us to migrate every single collection that we've published over the last 20 years to that new platform. So that's currently available in select collections, but we're migrating about 10 collections each year to Cortex, so you will be able to also download and request transcripts to handwritten material.
All right, great. Thank you so much. So next, we did get a few questions. I'm actually happy to answer this. So we had a few questions about how to access AM Explorer from AmericanAncestors.org. So what you're going to want to do is to log into your member account on AmericanAncestors.org and then navigate to our search menu. And in that menu, you'll see a heading listed as external databases. And if you click there, you should see a listing for AM Explorer. When you click that, you should be given full access to all of the collections there on AM Explorer. But kind of going off of that, Laura, we did have a question. You had mentioned creating a login so that you can save things under your account. I think it was a folder called My Archives. So would our members, when accessing AM Explorer through their AmericanAncestors.org account, would they then need to create a login in order to save things to their archives?
Yeah, so that's another really great question. So once you click on My Archive, it will go automatically to this page that says create My Archive account. And the only thing that it will ask you is an email and a password. And that means whenever you go back to My Archive, you can log into it. So you have a private login that allows you to save your own pages and your own documents as if you were bookmarking pages or leaving or taking kind of putting books on a bookshelf. That's how it's meant to work. Sometimes we've seen our collections being used in a classroom. So we've sometimes seen classrooms create their own kind of email account so that they can use the same My Archive in a kind of bigger group. But normally it's used by kind of individual researchers who want to create their kind of own research shelf. So that will be kind of associated with your email and whatever password you decide to set for it.
Great, thank you. So we did have a couple of questions about the best way to search as well. So for example, one person noted that a few of the searches you did were kind of one word or just a few words. Is that what you'd kind of recommend as a general rule to kind of keep the search is limited to just a few words? And then also someone else had asked if you could use quote marks to narrow a search further, kind of further specify what you're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I do sometimes do name searches using quotation marks as well. So I could have searched Benjamin Franklin in quotation marks to try and get what the quotation marks, as many of you already know, does is look for that exact phrase. So with names that can be really useful. Sometimes names can be kind of, you know, you saw the letter that he signed as B. Franklin, for example. So sometimes people put their names down in different ways. So I sometimes use proximity searches to kind of try and get around that. But yeah, absolutely. Using quotation marks to do phrase searches for names can be a really powerful tool. Just try.
Right.
And you can use as many keywords as you want. There's no limitations. I just tried to kind of use a few words to get started.
All right, great. Thank you so much. And then we had a question here from someone who's wondering if they can find information about their not famous family members in AM Explorer. And I think based on what you showed us with, you know, those surveys from Smith College and things like that, it seems like the answer is definitely yes, that you can find records from not famous ancestors. Is that what you'd say?
Yeah, yeah, there's many people and many voices that are present in those documents, particularly from the US. So it is worth searching for your family members. And we are a global publisher, so we work with lots of quite big archives around the world. So if you're looking for very, very focused community archives, I'm sure kind of what you have available, local community archives might be a useful place to look at as well. But there's lots and lots of different kind of individuals who are writing to the Kinsey Institute, filling out surveys, taking part in social movements and organizations, and creating organizational records, and their voices and their lives and the communities that they were part of have been digitized in our collections. So kind of finding out what their lives were like and what kind of things they lived through is definitely something that you can search for within AM Explorer.
Right, great. Thank you very much. And then here we have another question about searching. So I know this is a common question in genealogy. When you have a last name, the example they give here is Brewer, which can be spelt several different ways historically. How would you recommend searching for a surname like that with many variations?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So it's maybe kind of from a technological, geeky kind of side of things, it might be useful to know that when you're going through printed material and you're entering a search word, the technology, the software is looking for the exact spelling that you've given. If you work with handwritten documents and you're using handwritten text recognition technology, it's working a little bit differently. It's using artificial intelligence and machine learning to look at the probability of different characters appearing together being the right word. So that means that variant spellings might be discoverable. So one example of that is nutmeg, for example, in East India Company records. Sometimes in early modern writing it's spelled with 2 T's, sometimes with 2 G's, but because of the kind of probability of those letters appearing together still being the word nutmeg, the machine learning behind the HTR technology is really good at picking up the word in varying contexts, but it depends on the exact word. With the kind of example of a name with variant spellings, I would still recommend searching one at a time for the different spellings, and looking at what comes up in order to be as thorough as possible. So that's probably what I would recommend.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much, Laura. I think that's probably all the time we have for today for the questions portion. So I do just want to thank you again for that excellent presentation. I especially loved kind of the part you included at the end about using the collections to kind of give insight into your own grandmother's life, even though you didn't have information that came directly from her, that you can kind of use these collections to bring life to your ancestors by, looking at how people from the past were affected by different social situations and current events. That's definitely something that we try to emphasize here at American Ancestors. So yeah, excellent presentation, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for organising this and all your hard work behind the scenes, and taking the time, everyone who's attended today and listened, and all of your excellent questions. It's been a delight to speak to all of you. And if you have any additional questions, please get in touch with American Ancestors, or you can contact us at support@amdigital.co.uk. That's on our website as well, and we'll be happy to answer any more questions from you.
All right, thank you so much. So yes, to echo what Laura has said, please do get in touch if you have any further questions. You can reach us at education@nehgs.org, and we can also put you pass your emails along to AM Explorer directly if they're kind of better suited to their support team. If you do have more specific questions about your family history research, you might consider hiring our research services team or using our expanded chat service. The chat service puts you in direct communication with a genealogist. It's free and open to the public Tuesday through Saturday from 9 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time, with extended hours on Wednesdays from 9 to 8 p.m. To access this service, you can go to americanancestors.org/chat. Thank you again for joining us. As you leave the event, you will have the opportunity to fill out a survey and give us your feedback. As we continue to expand our webinars and online offerings, any and all feedback is extremely helpful and appreciated. This free webinar was made possible by the generous support of members and friends around the world. Please consider making a gift to American ancestors to keep these programs free and to create more free programs for you and others. If you'd like to access more how-to resources or learn about our upcoming online educational programs, please visit our online learning center at americanancestors.org. Best of luck in your research, and I hope to see you at our online programs in the future. Goodbye for now.